In preparation for exploring the concept of worldview and religion, an essential component of its study, we need to look closely at the even larger picture which embraces all aspects of human existence, the concept of culture. Dr. Don Owens, missionary, anthropologist, former MNU president, and longtime friend, provides the resources for this lecture. Since the use of the word culture is viewed differently in so many instances, especially among anthropologists, for our current usage, we will define culture as the more or less integrated systems of ideas, feelings, and values, and their associated patterns of behavior and products shared by a group of people who organize and regulate what they think, feel, and do. Ideas, feelings, and value are the three basic dimensions of culture. Ideas. This aspect of culture has to do with the knowledge shared by members of a group or society. Without shared knowledge, communication and community life are impossible. Cognitive assumptions shape the mental categories people use for thinking. They play a vital role in determining the kinds of authority people trust and the types of logic they use. Taken together, these assumptions give order and meaning to life and reality. Existential and cognitive assumptions furnish people with the concepts of time, space, and other worlds. For instance, in the West, we assume that time is linear and uniform. It runs like a straight line from a beginning to an end, and it can be divided into uniform intervals such as years, days, minutes, and seconds. Other cultures see time as cyclical. It's a never-ending repetition of summer and winter, day and night, birth, death, and rebirth, and growth and decay. Feelings. Affective assumptions underlie the notions of beauty, style, and aesthetics found in a culture. They influence people's tastes in music, art, dress, food, and architectures, as well as the way they feel towards each other and about life in general. Values. Evaluative assumptions provide the standards people use to make judgments, including their criteria for determining truth and error, likes and dislikes, and the right and wrong. Evaluative assumptions are also the priorities of a culture, and thereby shape the desires and allegiances of the people. Going back to our original definition of culture, more or less integrated, indicates that cultures and cultural frames are never fully integrated. Human beings and their beliefs are never fully consistent. There are gaps and interval contradictions in their theories, just as there are in their behaviors. As members of a society, differences in beliefs from one individual to another in modern complex societies are so great that we may talk about personal rather than cultural worldviews. Individuals may be in crisis of belief to the point of questioning the convictions of their culture. However, if the society is unified in its beliefs, change can be resisted by some means. Thus, worldviews help us understand cultural stability and resistance to change. Integration is limited by the fact that all cultures are constantly changing, some rapidly and some more slowly. New traits may be added that impact the other areas of culture. Some traits are dropped, as these changes call for new cultural synthesis or orientation. Inconsistencies, competing theories, and changes in customs undermine the internal harmony of a culture. But as long as a minimal cultural integration exists, organized social life is possible. And my German isn't good here, but Weltanschauung, or worldview, is a people's total response to their universe, or as anthropologists use the term, the corpus of beliefs around the world shared by members of a society. As we have indicated, not all individuals or segments of a society may share all components alike, but they are shared by a predominant segment of that society. A worldview includes beliefs about God, gods, or no gods, beliefs about the world, beliefs about truth and ethics, and beliefs about humankind. If worldviews are largely implicit, how can we study them? As we study a people's culture, we must infer their basic assumptions from their beliefs and practices. We need to look at similarities and common themes that seem to run like a thread through a wide range of cultural beliefs and behaviors to arrive at the most satisfying conclusions. We need to examine the language in order to discover the categories the people use in their thinking. We need to study the symbols and their rituals, such as festivals and rites of birth, marriage, and death. We need to study their literature and methods of enculturation. We need to ascertain changes in thought and practices that have occurred over time and through possible acultural processes. We may adopt comparative standards with our own. As an exercise to let us consider some dynamic themes in a North American worldview, first, here is a definition of cultural themes. Rather than having one dominant motif or pattern in a culture, cultures are composed of a set of multiple cultural themes or dynamic affirmations characteristic of a culture, affirmations which actively structure the way people view reality. These dynamic themes are confronted or impacted by cultural themes, which provide stability to a culture. A real and rational world. We see this world as rational and orderly and operating according to natural laws that can be discovered and understood by human reason. Matter obeys the laws of physics and chemistry, and animals reflect the laws of biology, psychology, and sociology. We make sharp distinction between actual events and myths, facts and fiction, reality and illusions. The perception of reality is rooted in a Judeo-Christian belief that God created a universe that exists outside of but dependent upon himself, or obeys the laws of physics or concepts found in the natural sciences. Greek dualism has led to a sharp distinction between science and religion. Many Westerners today use science to explain the natural world and limit religion to miracles and visions or matters of ultimate concern. Most cultures do not make a sharp distinction between the natural and the supernatural. For them, the supernatural pervades the natural. So let's talk a little bit about humans versus nature. As North Americans, we draw a sharp line between humans and other forms of life. We see animals, or humans, as having a unique value. This view is partly a Christian legacy. Humans are viewed as having eternal souls, and as unique beings, are believed to be in charge of the natural world. Thus, we have social and human engineering to control the physical world and harness its resources for the material welfare and service of man. Other societies have alternative assumptions. In much of the Far East, humans are considered to be a part of nature and the physical world, thus stress unity and harmony between the natural environment and man-made structures. People in other cultures see themselves as being overwhelmed by the natural world. It is dangerous and animated by the presence of spirits. Thus, they are helpless and distrust the physical environment or concerns that extend to the social and political life of a society. Then we have materialism and prosperity, or property, North Americans tend to judge humans by by what they own. We measure achievement and success primarily by the quality of material goods a person possesses. We tend to equate happiness more with material wealth rather than with intellectual or spiritual qualities. We tend to judge other cultures by their technological developments. The concept of private ownership stands in sharp contrast to much of the tribal world where land, boats, houses, and even food belong to the larger groups of family lineages, associations, or the tribe. For the most part, North Americans believe in progress. They look for a better way of life and think of this largely in material terms. Technology will solve most problems. Peasant societies tend to be suspicious of others who are getting ahead. North Americans love to analyze situations. They believe the world is orderly and predictable. Time and money will solve most problems. lack of progress, problems, and technological problems are all problems that can be understood and solved. People in many cultures see the world as basically incomprehensive. Fatalism prevents many from making efforts to change their conditions. In their analysis of situations, North Americans tend to sort reality into opposing categories which are often assigned moral values. Twofold judgments seem to be the rule: moral, immoral, legal, illegal, right and wrong, sin and virtue, black and white, success, failure, civilized, primitive, practical, impractical, secular, religious, work and play, public and private. In a rational, orderly world, it is possible to plan for the future, to set goals and achieve them. The apparent reluctance to plan in some societies is frustrating for most North Americans. Pragmatism means generally examining several solutions and choosing between them. Some societies think it is better to be a good person and build relationships. As North Americans, within the cluster of characteristic worldviews, there are counter themes that help provide equilibrium. Production and profit has to do with energy and a work ethic. Individualism is one of the most fundamental themes in the worldview of the United States. Autonomous persons, choose for ourselves, be ourselves, our belief that all people have inalienable rights of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We have a search for identity. It's a need to achieve, the need for recognition. Self-reliance is at the heart of North Americans' identity, is self-reliance. The fear to have to depend on others or be without money. They expect people to take care of themselves. The emphasis on the worth of the individual calls for humanitarianism. Disaster, famines, earthquakes, orphans are all responded to. The concept of the dignity of each individual is tied to a fundamental assumption, the equality of all human beings. Equal opportunity in social and economic standards of living. Opportunity is not the same as an automatic leveling of everyone to the same standard of living. When faced with a problem, we want immediately to get to its source, that is, meeting the problem head on. We've looked briefly at some of the major assumptions in the North American worldview. Obviously, there are many more, and those have considered need to be examined in further detail. Not all Westerners share all of these assumptions, for we are influenced by the particular cultures in which we were raised. We need to examine our cultural assumptions carefully, for many of them run counter to Christian thought. They need to be examined in light of Scripture.